Mom and I were alone. She only had a little talent. Dad and I were the ones who were really adept. Anyway, we stayed on the small farm we owned until last spring. Then Mom married again, and I was free to leave. I think her new husband was sorry to see me go, because it meant a lot of manual work for him that I had been doing an easier way. I decided to see if I couldn't find others like myself, so I left and started across the country. "Do you have any other powers, or can you just control things?" Marty asked. He grinned. "If you mean, am I an all-around Superman? No. Dad wasn't either. I do have a scattering of other PSI talents, though, but nothing as well developed as my telekinesis. I'm still working on them." Tommy came in from school just then. "Could you teach him how to use his mind that way, or do you have to be born with it?" I said. He smiled again. "No, you don't have to be born with it. Everyone could do it if they started training themselves young enough to use their minds to the fullest extent. All through history certain people have had strange powers. The trouble was they were thought to be freaks instead of the better developed humans they actually were. Even now we're only on the threshold of learning the full power of the mind." He turned to Tommy. "Would you like to learn how to do things, Tommy?" "Sure. Like what?" He glanced at Marty and me. "Like making the world a better place to live." 2 weeks later, at a meeting of the town council, I wasn't too worried about getting the proposal accepted. We might have some trouble with Atherson, but I figured between the two of us we could handle him. When the new business came up, I stood up and led Tommy to the front of the hall. There were a few whispers as we went, as children under 15 aren't allowed in the hall during a council meeting. "Tommy has something to say to you which, I think, will interest everyone here. Go on, son." Seconds afterwards, we all heard a clear "Hello," but not with our ears. The word came from inside our heads. Someone said, "The kid's a telepath," and the silence was broken. Everybody was talking at the same time. "I suppose you think it's an honor to have one of them damn things for your son," Atherson yelled. "I'm glad you're the one who got stuck, and not me." "Tommy was not born a telepath, John," I told him. "He has been deliberately trained to make use of the latent power in his brain. And I don't think I'm stuck either. We all know we've been slowly slipping into retrogression ever since '63. None of us like it, but there isn't anything we can do to halt it. Yet. We don't want our children, or their children, to keep slipping backwards. If we don't stop it in our lifetime, we may not be able to stop it at all. As I see it, the best chance we have to at least achieve a status quo is to accept the aid of those among us with PSI talents are willing to give. After all, it's their world, too. With their help, we may be able to build a better civilization, one without the socio-political diseases that led to the war. The young man who has been staying at my house for the past 3 weeks taught Tommy to do what he just did. He says he thinks he can do it with any child under 10 years old, and is even willing to try it with some teenagers. Of course, Tommy's training has just begun. He will keep on learning for years. Here's my idea. If some of the children get a grounding in how to develop their dormant brain power, by the time they're 20, they'll be able to mold a new society, one geared to the present culture instead of the past traditions. How about it?" I waited. For a minute there was silence. Finally one of the older men stood up. "Is he sure he can do it?" "All we know is it worked with Tommy," I replied. "I don't like it. It's unnatural," Atherson said. "No one asked you to like it," someone said. Another called, "Do you think 3 world wars in 50 years is natural? Let's take a vote." A vote was taken, and it was decided to add an extra class for those children whose parents wanted them to attend. After a month, the council would expect a report on what progress, or lack of it, had been made. A few weeks later, when my math class was over, I hung around to watch the new class. It was divided into small groups, each training on a different PSI talent. One group was lifting pencils and gently returning them to desks by telekinesis. Another was sitting quietly, once in a while breaking into shouts of laughter, probably telepathy. There were other groups, but I didn't know enough about the talents to identify their work. During the time he was teaching, he met a girl. They spent quite a bit of time together, and she joined the special class. By the time the report to the council came due, it wasn't hard to tell they were in love. Just about everyone in town turned out for that meeting. The boys and girls who were taking the class were seated at the front of the hall. The report was first on the agenda, so the kids could go home to bed. When we started, he said, I asked those children who weren't interested, or who were, unsuited to the work, to leave. Then we ran through a general training exercise, and after a week, I split the class up into groups. Each group was to concentrate on one talent, but general sessions for the entire class give everyone practice in all talents. I think we've made fairly good progress. Some of the older teenagers have shown an interest in the talents. He glanced at his girl. And although progress has not been as rapid as with the younger children, they are sufficiently developed to help instruct. Now your children are going to demonstrate what they have learned. For the next half hour, we watched Tommy and 14 other boys and girls work. Tommy and the others who had concentrated on telepathy read silently to us from books and talked to each other, projecting their thoughts so we could also listen in. The telekinesis group all worked together to build a small table. All the necessary materials were stacked at the front of the room. The kids sat in a half circle, their brows furrowed in concentration, as lumber, nails, and hammers moved under the guidance of their minds. When they had finished, the table was complete, even to the sanding and a coat of varnish. Finally, the one with precognition, a girl about 6 years old, with long blonde hair, gave the weather forecast for the next 2 weeks. Copies of her prediction were passed out to us, so we could check her accuracy. Once the kids were gone, he stood up again. I hope you are all convinced as to what can be accomplished through the use of PSI. The talents can and should be used for the betterment of society, not for carnival sideshows. Of course, there are more than those just demonstrated. Unfortunately, I couldn't find them present in this group, and was hoping for either a healer or a sensitive, but no one had the necessary ability. If you want the class continued, the decision is yours. Thanks for having open minds, and for giving me a chance. He picked up his jacket and walked out. Atherson didn't bother to come to the meeting, so the vote to continue the class was unanimous. He stayed on, teaching part-time, helping out with the work at my place, and seeing his girl. Then, one afternoon 2 weeks after the council meeting, she came to see me. "You've got to stop him, Mr. Tranton," she said. "He's going to leave. He told me he was going right after he finished the class today. He's probably down at the store right now, buying things to take with him. You've got to make him stay." "Why?" I asked quietly, watching the tears well up in her eyes. She hadn't lost her composure yet, but she felt so strongly about him she was on the verge of breaking down. "Because I love him, and he loves me," she retorted. "That's why. Won't you talk to him? At least get him to take me with him. Please?" "You said you love him. Would you rather he stayed here, and was never fully happy, or left to continue searching, maybe to return some day, ready to settle down? If you really love him, there's no question.